Hello, and welcome to another week of Central Reads, our 2024 Bible reading plan. This week, we are wrapping up the Gospel of Matthew. We're also closing the week with two really great Psalms, but we're wrapping up the Gospel of Matthew this week. And I, for one, have really enjoyed spending time, the last month actually, in the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew's ending to the Gospel is a masterpiece. The way that he tells the story of the last few days of Jesus' life and all of the trials that Jesus goes through, the trial that Peter goes through in a sense, his ending of the Great Commission, right, to go and make disciples of all nations. Thank God that we have the ending of the Gospel of Matthew. It really does. I mean, that ending in Matthew 28, that really does give every church in the world and the church our mission, right? Which is to make disciples, make followers of Jesus, teach people, to baptize them. So yeah, it's awesome. But I want to just draw your attention actually to today's reading, Matthew 25. It's kind of a famous chapter. It's a little bit of a scary chapter, but it starts out, and again, he is addressing the religious people in the center of Jerusalem. This is in the religious world. He's addressing God's people here. And there's a famous parable, the parable of the talents. And it's basically this parable that says to religious people, and in a way, that's people like us, you have been entrusted with God's mercy, with God's grace, with God's goodness, with knowing God. You've been entrusted with this. Now, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to invest it? Are you going to bury it and hold on to it for yourself? Or are you going to go out there and spend it? Are you going to go out there and invest it? Are you going to go out there and share what you've been given, God, with the world? And the problem is that these religious people ended up burying it. They ended up wasting it, and it was taken away from them and given to someone else. And the more that you bury and hold on to God for yourself, the less God you get, it seems like. And the more you share what you've got, and you spend what you've been given, and you invest what you've been given, the more you get. And it's that's a challenge for each and every one of us as Jesus followers. It's a challenge for people like me, for pastors, because what I want more than anything else is for us to invest what we've been given. God, invest it in the world around and spend it and share it, and be a little reckless with it. Take risks. That's what the parable is kind of, not to hold on to it for ourselves, not to bury it. That's one thing. The other thing is the second big parable, or the third big parable in Matthew 25. It's this the parable of the sheep and the goats, and it's a tough one. Kind of this picture of like the end of all things, where like people get separated into sheep and goats, into a good future and a not so good future, and what it all hinges on is when you were hungry. This is Jesus talking. When I was hungry, you gave me food. And when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. And when I was a stranger, you welcomed me. When I was naked, you gave me clothing. When I was sick, you took care of me. When I was in prison, you visited me. And they asked, Lord, when was it that we actually did all these things? And it was when you did it to the least of these. It's like you did it to me. And the opposite is true. When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. And they asked, when did we not do these things? And it's like, well, when you didn't do it to the least of these people on earth, that's like you did it to me. And there's a lot of questions we can ask about this parable that are important questions, but it seems to me the pressing point of this parable that Jesus is he is heightening the stakes here to really press this into people, is to say what you do to the least of these on earth, to the people who are less than, to the people who are poor, to the people who are not worthy, to the people who you don't get personal benefit from helping. What you do to the least of these. That's what matters. That's what counts. And it's in the face of the least of these. That's where we actually meet Jesus. That's an enormous challenge for each of us who want to say we're following Jesus. The way we follow him is by going out into the world and meeting him in the faces of and in the hearts of and the lives of the least of these around us. That's a challenge for us to live like. It's very different than a lot of the Christianity, a lot of the church, a lot of the faith that's kind of popular in our culture. But that seems to be what Jesus is talking about here. So anyway, enjoy this week of reading. It is a good week. It's a challenging week. It takes us through the last week of Jesus' life, his death, his burial, and his resurrection. Matthew's stories are different than others in many ways, similar also. But yeah, feel free to ask me questions. We love questions. And let's talk about it together. All right, have a great week of reading.